After years of training, I had finally mastered the ability to jump from one side of the screen to the other. I realized my true destiny. I decided to dress up in the most impractical leather outfit possible with funky headwear. I was going to join the X-Men. Then I was quickly turned down because they already have the guy that can teleport. Who knew? This can't be happening. It can't be. I worked so hard. I put out videos. I learned how to jump around in cuts. How? No. I'm not gonna take this. If they won't have me as an ally, then fine. I'll become their greatest villain. Jumpman. Cue the guitar! Hey guys, welcome back to another midnight showing. As always, I'm Jumpman, and I just got out of X-Men Apocalypse. I'm going to take this off. I can't see a thing. Alright, for those who don't want any spoilers, this movie was good. With an asterisk. It has an extremely slow start. And overall, nothing ever felt great. It was good, but not great. You get what I'm saying? It has a lot of really good build-up, has a lot of really good moments, especially near the end of this film. But if you were to compare it to any of the other X-Men films that you would consider great, yeah, this one doesn't hold up as much. In short, this movie is just got way too many goddamn characters, and we spend way too long reintroducing other characters that we should already know at this point, but are now played by younger actors because, fuck it, I guess they didn't want to hire the old people again. And it feels a lot of been there, done that scenario, even though their villain is trying to supposedly do something different. My final recommendation is that this is worth watching. I would probably tag it with a watch at a discounted price, but this isn't one of those ones that I would begrudge you for actually paying full price to see the movie. It just isn't quite up to snuff, and I could see you taking a step back from the hype train, especially with all of the other superhero films that have come out lately, like Batman and Civil War. Yeah, comparatively, this is about the second best out of the three. I'll let you figure out which one's better than which. So yeah, final verdict. It's worth seeing in theaters just at a discounted price. Don't play for the full price ticket. Go to matinee or $5 Tuesday, or wait till it hits the cheap theater in your town. You won't regret it. For those who want spoilers, let's go into the plot of this. Basically, you're going to be lost for the first hour of this movie, especially in the first 15 minutes if you know nothing about Apocalypse. Because we start out in ancient Egypt, the real true enemy of everyone. And this is supposed to be the rundown of how Apocalypse survives for so fucking long, because they cut out all of the alien shit connected to him. And yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, he has the ability to transfer his consciousness into other people's bodies. And in doing so with mutants, he acquires their abilities, so he can just stack up a ton of abilities on top of each other, which he rarely ever uses anything other than his main ability, so I don't know how that works. But the people of Egypt decide to fight back against this evil false god and bury him in his own temple, where he managed to survive thanks to the help of one of his current horsemen back then who could project shields. She survived just long enough to make a barrier around Apocalypse so that he could survive the crumbling of his pyramid. Ugh. Tongue twister. Fast forward to the 1980s, we get Moira from this movie, which is a piece of shit, and I will talk about that probably within this video and on a video on its own eventually. she's still working for the CIA, and she looks into a strange cult that is formed around the thought that Apocalypse is the first mutant, which is up for debate even in the comics. But they managed to find the ruins of his collapsed pyramid, and mostly because of Moira, she ends up leaving the sunlight on a thing that charges up and finally finishes the transfer process, so that he wakes up in modern day, 80s. Thus, he sets on a quest to rebuild his horsemen, cleanse the world of all of these weak, inferior beings, and start the world over again as him as God. That's basically the plot. He wants to take over the world. Now, going into the good aspects of this film, once again, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as Xavier and Magneto, respectively, blow it out of the fucking park. They are the guys that carry this movie again. Every single time I see these two inside of a movie together, they know how to play their characters. It's like they were born to play Xavier and Magneto. In fact, I'd even go as far as to argue that McAvoy really hasn't found much work since he landed these jobs. I'm just saying. And of course, we do have a few other great performances that are worthy of note inside this, like Oscar Isaac's performance as Apocalypse. Yes, I'll admit he did not have the intimidation factor that Apocalypse should have had, being the be-all, end-all of the X-Men bad guys next to the Phoenix. But I will admit, he did a damn impressive job with what he was given, and I can actually see him as Apocalypse. And of course, Jennifer Lawrence returns as Mystique / Raven, whichever one you want to call her, and she does a pretty good job. It's not the best, but I did like how they were trying to play. She didn't want to be the hero that she was built up to be after the events of Days of Future Past. So she's kind of walking that line between hero and redeemed figure, I guess you could say. It's kind of complex, and it's a little bit harder to explain in detail in a video like this. I'll try to explain it later, because there were some things about her that we will talk about in a second. Everyone else in the movie is basically there. They're not bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. The guy they got for Scott Summers and the people that they got for Jean Grey or anything, they did fine, okay? They were all perfectly fine and acceptable. I have a problem with it personally because I don't like the fact that they just took all of these adult characters and now they're making them teens again, because that works out so well when you do that in other media. But I will say that none of them actually bugged me, and I can honestly say the kid they got to play Scott, I kind of like him. Look, my favorite X-Men is and always will be Scott Summers, the guy from the 90s cartoon, not necessarily the person who went crazy in the comics and ends up killing Xavier. And no, that's not spoiler warning, because Avengers vs. X-Men happened 7 or 8 years ago? Come on, guys. But I can see that I see the beginnings of the character I like inside this kid, and I do want him to grow up to be the leader of the X-Men and actually act like a leader instead of the whiny guy who pleads about his brother. Yeah, Alex dies in this movie. Spoiler alert if you didn't already get that by me telling you spoilers. Going on to some of the other good things, the effects in this movie are great. Minus one part near the end of the movie, which I will talk about, but they are all just solid across the board. They don't look overly cartoonish, but they don't necessarily look like they're supposed to, which fits for the movie, especially when Apocalypse is using his actual power, which is matter manipulation. He can manipulate just matter. He can change their atomic structure. He can turn a little thing of dust into a solid blade that cuts off a guy's head. He can literally mend you with a wall, which, if he can do all of that, it does lead the plot hole of why doesn't he just vaporize all the people, all the X-Men inside the movie, so he doesn't have any opposition. I will say that inside of the comics and the TV show, it was kind of established that he can't actually do it with organic matter, so he can't actually hurt any living beings that way. He can do it with, say, a rock and manipulate it, and he can also manipulate his own atomic structure, being that in the comics and the TV show, he's part cyborg, and he can make himself grow and shrink. Yeah, they kind of ignore the whole part cyborg part of this mythos. I'm just saying. The action in this movie is very good. Nothing is great, mind you, but considering that most action films that I see only have subpar action, it was nice to see one that had good, solid action throughout. I would have liked some more, I don't want to say spectacle to the action, but when you have the X-Men, it works better when they're working in teams to fight some people. But we get a lot of one-on-one battles across the board. You got Nightcrawler versus Angel, you've got Beast versus Psylocke, you got Storm versus Scott. You know, we got a lot of 1v1s everywhere. What we need is more of a 5v1. They do that with Apocalypse later, but that's that one scene I want to talk about later. If they had had more of that, I probably would have said this action was great, but they didn't, so I'm just going to call it good. It's entertaining, and if you like a lot of 1v1 stuff, which it can be damn impressive when they do it right, and they did do it right, it just, they didn't have that wow factor with them, if you get what I'm saying. But I guess that's a good segue to lead into, let's talk about some of the bad stuff about this movie. This movie is very, very jumbled. As I said, if you don't know anything about Apocalypse, the first 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to be completely lost. You're like, why the hell am I in ancient Egypt? Because everything evil comes from there, I'm just saying. But even worse, for the first hour of this movie, it's almost completely reintroduction of characters. It's reintroducing Scott, who's having problems at school. Didn't we see the scene inside of X-Men Origins Wolverine? I'm just saying, we saw this, didn't we? Oh, we've got to reintroduce Jean Grey. Well, we also have to introduce Jubilee. She does nothing. I think she gets 2 lines in the actual movie. There may have been 5 in the script, but 3 were cut for reasons. We have Nightcrawler, who's thrown inside of a fucking battle cage inside of Germany with Angel? What the hell is Angel doing in Germany? I don't get this. And of course we have to reintroduce Angel. Don't forget about Storm, which they do some characterization with Storm, but most of these characters get very little to nothing. I mean, on the bad guy side, Psylocke and Angel are pure muscle. They have nothing else to do there. Hell, Psylocke maybe has 5 lines, and 3 of those were cut. I'm serious. Why did you turn down Deadpool, Olivia Munn? Because you thought this would give you a bigger role? Because you didn't get it? I'm just saying. Speaking of Deadpool, I would just like to point out they made a joke in that movie about the mansion always blowing up. Guess what happens in this movie? Yeah, the mansion blows up. It's cliche and overdone, but it does lead into one really goddamn good thing, which is Quicksilver. Quicksilver is back, and he actually does shit in this movie. And he doesn't just get one scene like that wonderful time in a bottle scene when he's running around the room deflecting the bullets and things. No, he gets 2 of them. One of them is actually rescuing everybody in the mansion as it's exploding. He only misses one person who was already dead by the time he actually got there, so we can, which is the aforementioned Alex, we can forgive him for that. And that scene was almost perfect. The only thing that would have made it so much better is that when he first arrives on the scene, he is eating a Twinkie. And he literally just drops it in air. It floats there, of course, because he's just moving so fast. And he just runs inside and starts grabbing people. And he starts doing little things. You know, he like drinks someone kid's soda. He sees some fish in the tank that are being flown. He grabs a vase. He scoops up the water out of the air, puts the fish inside, gives it to a girl, runs her outside, sets her down. He's like throwing people out the window into this makeshift net he made. You know, there's a lot of moments of Quicksilver being awesome inside of this scene. But what would have made it perfect is that at the end of the scene, he runs back, catches the Twinkie before it hits the ground, and goes back to the center to go talk to everyone. It's just going, so, things got exciting here today, didn't they? And of course, he gets that second awesome scene where we actually get to see him do shit. He sees Apocalypse there, and he just starts wailing on him. I mean, Apocalypse he gets punched, and he, like, moves for a second, and he, like, freezes in air, and then Quicksilver runs to the other side, punch him again, hit him, just doing all this shit, just laying it down on him. Of course, Apocalypse finds a way of getting out of it and doesn't really ever do much to him, but at the same time, it's nice to see Quicksilver actually do something. Just saying. But yeah, there is a thing about Jennifer Lawrence that needs to be addressed in this movie, and it is the dumbest thing possible. Okay, one of the things that has been a complaint in a lot of the other X-Men movies is that Mystique isn't in her wonderful makeup in a lot of them. Well, barring the first three. That was a different actress. We'll just say that. Inside of First Class and Days of Future Past, they found excuses to not put her in the makeup and just have her be Jennifer Lawrence in the screen. Inside of First Class, the reasoning was she really hadn't accepted herself as, a mutant, and she was trying to hide in the public, which I can also just say that the makeup in that one was atrocious, so I'm perfectly okay with them not putting her inside of it. Inside of Days of Future Past, the whole mentality was that she was more than willing to be herself out and open. But when she's trying to infiltrate places and, sneak into secret boardroom meetings and that kind of thing, I'm just saying, it makes sense that she's not inside of her blue form. So it didn't bug me there. This movie, though, creates some really stupid drama about her not wanting to be the hero that everyone is making her out. She's some kind of figurative leader inside the mutant race, which, just coming from the fact that this is Mystique, makes me laugh my ass off. But that's just because I know her comic counterpart. But so they can't find her. She spends most of her time inside of her Jennifer Lawrence form without the blue makeup, because that makes total sense. You're inside of a building full of mutants. It's perfectly fine to, go back to your regular form. You're basically naked anyway. You might as well. It's not like those clothes are real. They change with you, remember? And it got really, really annoying because the only real scene that we have of her inside of her blue form is at the climax when she finally realizes she has to fight for what she wants and blah-de-blah-de-blah. Look, if you don't want to do the 8 hours of makeup, put clothes on her. It's perfectly fine. We don't need to see her boobs. It's perfectly fine to put clothes on her and just have it from makeup, neck up, and maybe some hands. This isn't a hard thing to figure out. Look, they even said that in this movie, she's basically wearing a pantyhose suit, which got a little zipper thing in the back, which was folded over and skinned over. It took maybe an hour to put that shit on properly versus the 10 hours it took to do the makeup the old way inside of the makeup chair. It's perfectly fine to do that kind of stuff and just let her see her hands and this and put some clothes on. No, instead we just get her being Jennifer Lawrence and outside of her makeup because they didn't want to put it on her in any of the scenes that she's in, even though she's a big part of the movie. Okay. To say it bugged is an understatement. But there are some other good things, like we get to see Weapon X. It probably would have been better if they hadn't spoiled that in the trailer. But nonetheless, we actually get to see Wolverine in Weapon X form with the headgear thing. They don't go the full thing, where they cover up his face and only have the one robo eye. But they still have the headgear and all of the pokes and prods that are turning him into the feral thing. In which case, that actually does bring up one little point that people make about this movie. How did Wolverine get captured by Weapon X? We saw in the last movie that Mystique had him. Did she just give him to him? I have two things to say about this. One is my personal theory. If you watch the special features on here and see the deleted scenes, there's a version of that ending where his eyes don't glow yellow, meaning that Stryker found him at the end of this movie. I might be willing to believe that Bryan Singer thought that was the ending that got put inside the movie when all shit went down. So that would be the explanation why. My second thing to say about it is, it's Wolverine! Of course he gets caught and put inside the Weapon X program. It's his whole characterization. Come on, guys. It was going to happen. And clearly it's just a build for Wolverine 3, which I'm more than happy about, because they did put some Easter eggs inside of here. It's basically confirmed Weapon 23 is going to be inside of the next Wolverine movie, and I'm not going to say anything, but something sinister this way comes. Now, let's talk about the ending and the Apocalypse himself. I would talk more about his cronies, but as I said, Angel and Psylocke barely get a line inside of this movie. They're there strictly for cosplay fodder and muscle. They don't do anything else. Then we get on to Storm, who does get characterization because she's the one that finds Apocalypse after he's revived, and she's the first of his horsemen that get transformed, blah, blah, blah. And then we get Michael Fassbender as Magneto. Basically, he, after the events of Days of Future Past, he went to have a normal life hidden in some part of, I think it was Poland. And he has a wife and a daughter who is not Scarlet Witch. Sure. He is trying his damnedest not to go back to his whole future, his evil ways of superior mutants and whatnot. He's trying to live life like a normal person. And unfortunately, this is Magneto, so that's not possible. An accident happens at the factory he works at where he has to use his powers to save one of the other workers. He tries to brush it off, but it doesn't work and doesn't hold water. The cops come to arrest him. Unfortunately, because his daughter didn't want to see him go, she starts using her powers, which involve controlling animals and sending them into rage monsters. Even though Magneto is going peacefully, he's trying to calm her down. Unfortunately, one of the cops has a bow and arrow, fully drawn like a fucking idiot, and in the confusion lets go, and it pegs both his wife and his daughter. This sends Magneto into an obvious killing rage. He instantly wipes through all 10 or 12 of the cops that came to arrest him, who have no medal on them, by the way, with his daughter's locket. Yeah. Holy shit. After that, Magneto ends up going back to the factory to just murder all those fuckers for turning him in, because none of this would have happened. His wife and daughter would be fine if not for the fact that they couldn't accept that he tried to do something good. But this is when Apocalypse finds him and decides to recruit him, basically feeding this battle shock, if you will. Empowering him to a point where he can suck out every single mineral out of the ground itself that would literally sink continents. Magneto is how he's going to destroy the world. After this, Fassbender plays his role very, very numb. He doesn't really do much throughout the rest of the film until the end, where Mystique and Quicksilver will manage to actually get through to him. Quicksilver tries to tell him that he's his dad, even though he can't work with the courage because pussy, but that's not really something I have a problem with. This causes Magneto to turn on Apocalypse and basically save everyone. Now, Apocalypse at this point is trying to destroy the world so he can remake it, but he found out a way so that there's no more rebellions whatsoever. And that would be Charles Xavier. Remember that he can transfer himself from one body to another and take their powers. Now you see Charles Xavier's power combined with the amplification powers of Apocalypse equals he can control everyone's mind at all times. Game over. So he kidnaps the professor, which leads to the aforementioned explosion inside the mansion. And he tries to do the transform process. Moira, Beast, Mystique, Quicksilver, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler all show up to save him, and they actually manage to save Xavier. And they have to go in their 1v fights with all of the different horsemen, minus Magneto, who's stuck inside of his barrier while Mystique and Quicksilver talk to him. But he finally comes out, and he has to fight everybody, and he walks through most of them. I mean, Quicksilver holds him up for a minute, and the way that he beats Quicksilver is bullshit. He manages to get his foot caught inside of that stupid mending thing, which apparently that only covers his arm inside. It doesn't actually mend him with the wall. Even though we clearly see people like in the factory sink down to the ground and become one with the ground. But whatever, this battle scene is pretty damn cool, especially when all hope looks like it's lost. People are about to die. Xavier gets the idea they're still connected because the process only went halfway or whatever. So he can attack him mentally while people are tackling him physically. Which, to Battlefront, good thinking for you. Xavier gets his ass kicked. the most powerful psychic in the Marvel Universe, gets his ass kicked in a mental battle that is not with the Phoenix. And this is one of the only times we actually get to see Apocalypse go big, which is inside of this mental world fighting Xavier, which is bullshit inside of my mind. Just let me put that out. That's bullshit. Apocalypse is supposed to do that regularly. They're supposed to be fighting a 16-foot giant right now, but they're not. They're fighting Oscar Isaacs, who's 5'8", 5'9". He's not built very tough. He doesn't impose. Michael Fassbender's taller than you, goddammit. I'm not saying that intimidation equals height. I'm just saying that Apocalypse should always be the intimidating factor. And although Oscar Isaacs can be intimidating, especially when they do his little voice modulation thing, which kind of makes you think that he's messing with people's minds when he's talking to them, which is why they're always so agreeable. But it just bugs the ever-living shit out of me that they didn't do that inside the battle against Apocalypse. And then the effects just like take a shit to the bed when Michael Fassbender shows up, Magneto, to help everyone. And he's just sitting there. It looks like he's inside of one of those fucking chairs from the Insurgent movie. Or Allegiant, sorry. And he's just sitting there like this. Come on, get some dynamic motion inside of there, man. You know, throw shit. Actually show him picking it up and throwing it in batches. Show him trying to smash Apocalypse into a little ball and him breaking out. You know, have some dynamic action. But Magneto was literally just sitting there going like this in one of the worst effects ever. How did the effects just drop off at this point? This is beyond stupid. You know, the whole time he's just throwing more and more metal at him. Cyclops comes over, pulls his glasses off, and just unleashing his entire beam at Apocalypse, which he can take. He can take that full beam, but he should not be taking it as easily, as undistracted as he is. Combined with Magneto hammering all the metal shit into his arms. Combine this with the Professor's mental attack, and then finally Jean Grey shows up and unleashes the Phoenix inside of her and just starts vaporizing him. And he still won't die until Storm decides to randomly change sides because she saw her Mystique get hurt and Mystique's her hero, I guess. We don't get any kind of explanation on this. It comes out of left field because they didn't have a conversation or a thought bubble or talking to yourself or anything with Storm. She just comes up and she starts lightning the shit out of it, and we get the setup for the next movie. The end. To say that this ending is just kind of horribly paced and horribly written is an understatement. On top of which, you have the effects just shit the bed with some pretty dumb stuff. You can see why people might hate this movie. The slow start and this ending just can bug the shit out of you. Personally, I didn't think it was that bad because there were moments like when Jean does go Phoenix on fucking Apocalypse's ass. I did like that there was more than one of them fighting him at a time, even if some of the stuff doesn't make sense with my own knowledge of Apocalypse, who should be embedded with alien tech. I almost forgot to talk about that. Inside of the comics, the way that he can survive so long is because he found a crashed alien ship and literally used that tech to make himself bigger and better. He has an active time machine inside of the TV show that he keeps inside of his sarcophagus. It's just, you completely remove the tech element of Apocalypse so that he could be anti-tech in this movie. Which, Bryan Singer, I love you, man, but that's kind of stupid. And you're taking pot shots at X-Men The Last Stand about the whole third movie being the worst in the trilogy. And this is your third movie in this new trilogy? Yeah. I don't want to make it sound like I hate this movie. This movie is not bad. It just has a lot of things that, as a fan, I could go off on for hours. Fucking hours. But personally, I still found the movie entertaining. it was slow to start, but when it picked up, it really did pick up, and there were definitely a lot of really good moments inside of this. Stan Lee's cameo should have been inside the Quicksilver saving scene, not where it was. You shouldn't have been laughing at that scene. You know who you are. But in all honesty, yeah, I still give it a recommendation of seeing it. Just don't pay full price for it. Wait for the price to go down. Go to discount theater or matinee. Just don't pay full price for it. And yeah, that's it for me. Did you enjoy the video? Tell me what you thought about Apocalypse inside of the comments below, and maybe we'll get some healthy discussion going. And as always, if you liked what you see, be sure to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and share this video with your friends. It really does help me out. Be sure to like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitch and Twitter, and as always, I will see you all next time, which shall be soon.